Welcome to the podcast that puts a finger on the pulse of medicine and technology. On this show, you'll hear from investors, industry executives, and healthcare providers on the science and business of medicine. I'm your host, Omar M. Khateeb, and this is the State of MedTech. This is going to be the best podcast intro you're ever going to hear. You ready? You ready for this? I don't know if you're ready for this.
I am so ready for this.
All right, here we are. Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Omar M. Khateeb, your head of state for the State of MedTech. I'm joined by a dear friend, the first friend I ever made when I moved to Silicon Valley through the magical world of the interwebs, specifically LinkedIn, and that's Howard Rose. Howard, how the hell are you, man?
I'm so happy to be here, and yeah, it's amazing. I guess social media does really work. We've struck up a friendship, and we've stayed in contact. And look at us now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You came to my wedding. You know, our wives became very close. And yeah, it's just such a pleasure to have you on, especially you're somebody who I really respect a lot. What was interesting is that we connected through LinkedIn 5-6 years ago. So I watched your TED Talks on VR and medicine. And so when I got to meet you, at the time you and Elena were living in Stanford, and I just remember showing up in Stanford and walking around and us having wine at night, talking about technology in the future. So now we finally get to do that, on a podcast. So it's going to be fun.
It's good. You got to bring your own wine.
That's true. Bring your own wine. And for the physicians who are listening, again, I mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, but if you're new to this show, this episode, when you reflect on it, meaning you write a few key takeaways, that takeaway that you write down is actually eligible for a CME credit courtesy of CMify. So make sure you check the links below. You can get a credit for reflecting on VR in medicine and then some of the other interesting things we're going to talk about with Howard. So Howard, for context, who are you? tell the audience a little bit about your background, where'd you grow up and how did you get into VR and what you're, and we'll kind of transition into what you're doing at Spatial, but let's cover the VR part first.
Sure. Well, I originally grew up on the East Coast in Philadelphia, and I guess the salient thing is that I didn't love school, and I guess I figured if I knew education was interesting, I wanted to learn, but school never really grabbed me. So I'm really into experiential learning, and actually, one of my first really formative learning experiences, you see those little guitarists back there. In high school, I went to a guitar building school, a guitar building program in Tennessee, and I built an acoustic guitar. And that was the first real learning experience I had in my life. You do word problems at school and you do all that, abstract thinking, which is great and important. But if you're building something out of wood, if you're trying to put a neck on a guitar and make it straight and level and plumb and look nice, you can't bullshit, right? It's either there or it isn't. It's not like you get half the answer, right? It either looks good, looks right, or it isn't. So
yeah, but you have a pretty impressive career. I mean, and especially even also academically. But I mean, is it fair to say that you weren't a good student in school, or you were good and you weren't really interested in it?
No, I grew up in a family that had high academic expectations, and I've always been engaged in learning. But
that is the understatement. That is the understatement of all understatements. But you have a very academically inclined family.
So taking that forward, what I really love about VR is it is a medium for doing things. Right? You can use it in so many ways. You can use it for learning abstractions. You can create very abstract environments. You can create very realistic environments and learn in that context. So, my path to VR, I ended up at the University of Washington in graduate school at a research lab called the Human Interface Technology Lab.
Where'd you go for undergrad? And where'd you go for undergrad? What'd you study?
I was on the 10-year plan. I went to Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, and I studied video and education and music and a hodgepodge of things. And I also lived in Japan for a long time, so I did a lot of my studies abroad. But when I came back, I went to grad school at UW, and I ended up in this VR research lab, which was the coolest place on campus to be at the time. I felt really lucky to be there, but I did my research in using VR to teach language. So to teach Japanese, actually. And built this crazy thing back in the 90s called Zengo Sayu, which is a game where you engage with objects and you learn, and the objects can talk, and you could point to a virtual object and say, "What's that?" And it was a game that you could play either by yourself or with a computer or with another person. So, I look at technology and VR as a way to enhance what we're capable of, say in a classroom or in our house, or really building something that is not possible in this world. I studied education. My graduate degree is in educational technology, and back to that, I figured if education is like this, I can do it better. So that's my interest in VR, and then I got into health.
That's fantastic. And much like I have a very close bond with my father, and so my father being a surgeon, I went to medical school for a little bit before deciding to go into technology. I would feel badly if I didn't touch upon it. But can you tell us a little bit about your father?
1 second here. I need light.
All good.
You can cut that out because I think.
I'm definitely not cutting this out. This is the beauty of this podcast: raw, real, unedited. See, and the benefit is that people at home listening, they feel like they're hanging out with us.
Am I washed out there?
No, you look good. You look good.
Washed up.
That needs to go on a T-shirt.
Biochemists, and my dad was an enzymologist, and enzymologists are interested in catalysts, interested in what causes reactions. I never understood very much of what my father said, but I think the interesting thing there is that so much in science, there was this big push for structures, for like the Genome Project, and to understand the structure of DNA, et cetera, which is super important, but structure alone doesn't tell you anything. Structure just, once you know the structure, you have to figure out what it does, right? It's not that it doesn't tell you anything, but it doesn't, in and of itself, it doesn't tell you anything useful. You just know where stuff is. So,
by the way, just real quick, if you don't mind me interrupting, try not to hit the desk because it sounds like you're playing bongo drums.
I actually am playing bongo drums right now.
I knew this episode was going to be fantastic.
So, okay, yes, you get the bongos for free. Anyway, the interesting thing there, I know this is what you're asking, but this is what I'm answering, is that, the mechanics, I guess what I gleaned from my father, the enzymologist, is that, it's really about the action. It's the action. It's not the structure. It's what you do, and it's what things in nature do. It's what things in the cell do, and again, to draw a line back to VR, it's really when I'm a designer, right? That's what I love to do. I do the business, and I do a lot of other things just because I gotta. But when you're designing something, you're designing an experience for people, and that experience is not the structure of the experience. The experience is the opportunities that you create within the spaces that you create, and so I think that's one lesson I've sort of carried forward and thought about.
Interesting. What so both your parents are biochemists, academically inclined family, yet you did not go into academia per se. You did not go into biochemistry. You went and you had this interest in making guitars. You're on a 10-year plan, and then you end up at is it Washington University or University of Washington?
University of Washington, Seattle.
Got
the
it.
Real UW.
Oof.
Not
all the WashU people got pissed.
Well, or the University of Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'm not getting into that turf war. I do not have a pony in that race.
So in grad school, what'd you do? And this is just because again, VR. We hear about VR quite often these days, but VR wasn't exactly a thing 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So we're talking about in the 80s, 90s when you were in grad school.
Yeah, I'm that old.
I wasn't trying to date you, but my point is that
I've been at VR for about 30 years. So
what got you to gravitate towards it? Like because again, wasn't a thing back then, right? So how did this happen?
It really is the belief that you learn by doing. I mean, that sounds trite, and a lot of people talk about it. But in education, in edu-speak, it's called constructivism, and that we construct knowledge based on our prior knowledge, and we put things into context, and we have schemas that help us, make the complex procedures in our lives automated, and learning has to fit into our context, and it's constructed. It's not a bunch of facts that we absorb. So that's really my bent, and that's actually why I started talking about guitars, because guitars are, to me, are the epitome of really confronting a legitimate, authentic problem and having to work a solution. And so most education doesn't do that. It just falls flat. You're doing something abstract. You're doing something irrelevant. You're doing something that you're told is useful. It's not really until grad school that you actually get to choose what you're doing and stop worrying about the next step. Like, I'm here. I'm doing it. So what was exciting about the HIT Lab in the 90s was, so the HIT Lab was one of the premier VR research places in the United States.
What does that stand for, HIT Lab?
Human Interface Technology Lab. So the HIT Lab at the University of Washington, founded by Tom Furness, and I worked with a professor, my ed tech professor, Bill Wynn, who was great at giving me an opportunity to explore my own research. And we were doing outreach into schools and teaching kids to build virtual worlds. And really, it was a very open field. Still is, but it was rough and rugged, and nothing existed, and you had to hack everything together, and the stuff didn't work, and everything was an adventure. But what was exciting to me was, I still remember the first time I put on a headset and I sat at a computer and I programmed this little thing where it was basically tennis, and I had two little paddles, and one was here and one was way over there, and I had a little ball, and when I touched this orb over here, the ball flew over there, and when I touched this one, the ball flew back. It was but simple, but it was it was powerful enough for me to remember it. And I guess what really attracted me to make it a career was the opportunity to bring that paradigm of real-time computing into a lot of different contexts. So, I'm sort of a jack of many trades, but I think that's VR is malleable. It can do absolutely anything. And the challenge is to figure out what's worth doing.
Interesting. By the way, I just learned this the other day, but you know that saying, jack of all trades, master of none?
I do.
Did you know that that's the incomplete quote?
No.
Yeah, I did not either. So the full quote is actually, jack of all trades, master of none, better to be many than a master of only one.
Wow.
We should just wrap up right there.
I feel vindicated.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
That's the end of this. End of the episode. End of the podcast. I think we got it. That's it. We're done.
It's number 42, the ultimate answer.
So it sounds like your original interest was around, why things are the way they are, and more specifically, a focus on education. And VR just seems to be more. It seemed like it was just like the best vehicle to solve that problem. Am I off on saying that?
Yeah, I'm not a technologist for technology's sake. I'm very much an outcome focused person. I don't. If it was sock puppets that got you there, I'd be doing sock puppets.
What do you think about people? I mean, you're based in Silicon Valley. You're surrounded by people who are just technologists for technology's sake. I mean, which you must have an opinion about that.
Me, an opinion? That is funny. I'm not going to call anybody out, but I think that in the field of VR, there's, everybody's on their own journey, right? I don't own the technology. It's not my thing. I try to push it in a direction that I think has integrity. Just as relevant to health, because that's kind of where we're going with this conversation. I see a lot of companies that put on their website or wherever on their branding, based in science, based in neuroscience. This solution.
Yeah, everybody's based in science.
And you look, and it ain't there. They have
no.
A lot of them don't have a single paper that they cite. There is no evidence. I've seen a lot of places where they've cited work that I've been involved in.
That must be a trip.
Have them cite my work as their evidence, but I think it is incumbent upon the VR community to do this right, and it irks me that if you want to just do entertainment, cool. But when you start going out and saying evidence-based, science-based works for X, Y, and Z, and you don't share the evidence, it kind of makes all of us look bad. So
yeah.
I
completely agree. And look, that's kind of where I was going with this. Again, I have no problem. People can be into technology for technology's sake. That's fine. I have no problem with that. The problem that I have is mainly in our world, which is healthcare. Because, I don't think sometimes people think about like, oh, healthcare is so screwed up. If I come up with this, I can make a lot of money, right? And they don't take into account more often. They say they do, but a lot of times they don't take into account like, okay, we're going to come up with this technology that's going to be applied for, let's say, this surgical procedure, and it's going to make this difference, right? That's going to be X% better. Is that really is it worth it? Even if it makes it like incrementally better, is it worth the cost? Is it worth what it's going to do? And I don't think a lot of people take that into account. And so a lot of times I see, like for me personally, like I made this decision a few years ago, which was I kind of stopped being interested to go work for a cool tech company that's raised a lot of money if all their tech's going to do is just like add more cost to the healthcare system and like, you know, change a workflow and make it like incrementally better. I'm just not interested in that anymore. You know, I feel like VR and AI have become like a kind of like a circus, like kind of like, oh look, we got VR, oh look, we have AI, and it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, well, a lot of those words, AR, VR, XR, mixed reality, whatever, you know, what do they mean? So I'll give you my definition. So first of all, VR, the definition that I use is it's a computer generated experience that fools your senses into believing the experience is real. It evokes the sensation that it's real. And that is not, you know, there's no technology, there's no like headset or projection or this or HoloLens or whatever. That's a paradigm. And when you try to apply that paradigm to create virtual worlds, how do I leverage it? Because I need to understand my user. I need to really, I mean, all of this stuff is trite. A lot of people talk about it, but they don't take the time to do it. So in education or health, I'm taking them from somewhere to someplace that I hope they will go. And, you know, how do what is the anatomy of that experience? How does that experience work? How do I construct the affordances and leave the space for somebody to do the meaningful work? And, you know, when we design virtual worlds, when I design a virtual world, the first place I start is not with the technology, but I'm like looking at the person going, okay, I need to understand who they are. It's like designing any other product, you know, but a lot of times the technology kind of, you know, when you get to that technology layer, you're going to have to make compromises because the technology is never going to do exactly what you want. So you got to start with a malleable plan, but the more you can understand the people at the outset and really understand what your methodology is, what the mechanism of action is that you're going for, you can make intelligent decisions down the road. But if you don't start with that and you come across a technological block, something breaks, something doesn't work, something costs too much, all the other stuff that anybody who's done a project has run into, you don't know, you have no guideposts. You can't make a good choice. So read the papers. You know, I try to keep up with the literature as much as I can, but it's time consuming, and if you don't have a background in it, it's, you know, it can feel like a wall that's too high to climb.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, because I do want to touch on it, you know, the company that you had founded, First Hand Technologies, which is a VR company that was focused in healthcare, had a really fantastic solution specifically for those like in the world of pain, and I got the chance to actually use it many years ago. It was unbelievable. But can you tell us a little bit about like that solution, like what motivated you to look into that, and how is that applied like in hospitals?
Sure. So First Hand is a partnership that I did for many years with Ari Hollander. We both came out of the HIT lab, and we're working with Hunter Hoffman, Dave Patterson, Tom Furness, a group that was doing burn patient care with Snow World, and we worked on Snow World for about 15 years.
And what is Snow World?
Snow World is an application. It's kind of the iconic VR. health application. So it was designed to use for burn patients going through debriding or bandage changing or wound care. And it was used as a medium to try to reduce the amount of opioids that they needed. So they were immersed in VR in a helmet as they went through their debriding, bandage changing procedures. And the findings, this is widely reported in many journal articles, and you can see it at peer-reviewed articles and lots of studies. And one of the things we looked at was using the pain effect. What if we change, the field of view? What does that do to the pain effect? How does the changing immersion affect the analgesia? Or how does taking away the navigation or the self-control or the sense of self-efficacy and agency, how does that impact it? So doing a lot of incremental studies, looking at changing the temperatures. The snow world is a very cold environment. What if we make it hot? What does that do? How does that change? How do the graphics and the visuals change the perception of the pain and the pain relief? So,
what did you guys find like when you made those changes?
Well, the many successive studies. So essentially, field of view impacts immersion. So it kind of starts around someplace between 60 and 80 degrees. So if you're below 60 degrees of field of view, you're not really getting an immersive experience in the VR sense. And wider is better up to a certain point. Headsets now kind of hover around 100 something. And the visuals are much better, and they're smaller and lighter. And the smaller field of view things are kind of a thing of the past. But basically, what is interesting and relevant for people even today is that immersion and field of view are just one measure. But if you're doing something small, focused, tactile, think about real life. We're sitting in a room, you're fixing a watch, and that watch is only this big, but you are so focused on it and immersed in that. In the real world, you're fixing a real watch, the rest of the world kind of disappears, right? And you just get sucked into it. So likewise, if you're doing something very focused, that the field of view out there becomes less relevant. But generally, walking around in a virtual world, architectural, or just, moving through a virtual space, a field of view of 110 degrees is going to give you more of a feeling that you are there, that you are physically immersed in that space, and give you a sense of presence that you're there.
Interesting.
So that's one of the findings. Temperature. I could go on all day, but the outcome, and we're going to get to healthcare if it kills both of us. The outcome is the pain relief, the analgesia from VR has been proven over and over and over again in many different contexts with many different procedures and many different populations where, if you build it right, you can get virtually no sim sickness, no headache, no nausea, no simulator sickness. But it needs to respect the sensory system. Our senses are extremely sensitive to disturbances. So if you build a virtual world kindly to people, they can be in there for a long time. They can get a real benefit. And burn patients, pain relief, acute and chronic pain, was a primary focus of Firsthand for many years.
Interesting. This one thing that I think with the digital world, if you look like social media and everything, there's like a lot of good ways it's used, a lot of bad ways. It's really just the tool. and how you use it. Something that fascinates me about VR is that, there's this book by Maxwell Maltz from like 50 years ago called Psycho-Cybernetics about psycho being psychology, cybernetics kind of like a helmsman steering a ship. And he's a surgeon who did plastic surgery and realized like when he helped a patient change their face, like they changed a lot of things in their lives. And his thing was there's very little difference between when you experience something just in your mind by itself versus experiencing it in reality. And there's a lot of studies that show this, that the value of how you sort of form your perceptions, really alters the way that you're going to see things, obviously, feel about things, and then the way you take action on things. And I think like that's kind of like one of the values of VR is that most people, they don't have, let's say, the mental ability or the mindfulness training and everything to try and visualize something, right? Like, for example, if you're trying to rehabilitate yourself, to picture yourself walking again. But I feel like VR could be one of those mediums where in training the mind every single day, that helps like the actual person, like in real life, rehabilitate themselves, or even like put themselves in a situation where they can start visualizing themselves accomplishing things. Would you agree with that statement?
Sure. I believe, and I have seen that VR can really transform people. We've seen people stop using opioids. High-risk patients who've been using opioids for years finally get off of it.
And it's because you're giving them the sort of what their senses need. You're essentially supplementing that with something that's just as strong as an opioid, but it's not. It's a virtual experience.
Well, it works very differently than an opioid, right? An opioid, opioids don't actually make you better. They bond to your receptors so you don't feel pain, but they don't actually improve anything, right? And in fact, they can increase pain. There's all sorts of, the addiction is one obvious thing. But just taking opioids and doing nothing is not a recipe for success for many people. And it's a spiral. So I think VR, the mechanisms for VR in that kind of healthcare environment, in that kind of therapy environment where you're trying to reduce pain, you're trying to activate people. I think that so I think about, sort of 5 layers of VR superpowers. The first is immersion. And when you're immersed, when you feel that sense that that the world disappears, the world in quotes, like it, the real world disappears, and then you are fully engaged in that environment. That's sort of table stakes. That's the land of in a simplistic sense, that's the land of distraction. Distraction works for short amounts of time, but you can't distract people forever. So immersion is the start. The second one is it's a psychophysical experience. So the feeling of motion, the action, the feeling like in our application, in First Hand's application, Cool, you go over a waterfall, and when you go over the waterfall, you get a sense that you're really moving. That feeling of
I remember that.
So that psychophysical experience. Interaction is another one. So interaction plays a really important role because you're not just a passive viewer. Even if you are just watching, you know that you can do something. You know that you can affect the world. The world responds to you. It knows where you are. So it's a reciprocal thing. So that's 3. The cognitive ability, the ability to create experiences, in a simplistic word, puzzles, things to do, things that engage you, things where you're cognitively engaged about what is coming next. What does that mean? How is that relevant to me? Coaching, using lots of techniques that really are, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, kinds of approaches within VR. And the last one is emotion, that it is ultimately an emotional experience, and people are driven by story. Facts are wonderful, but give me a good story. So story is what really changes people. And I think, getting back to your question about why does it work? Why does VR help people get off of opioids? Awesome question. But I think it's, we could talk on that one for a long time. But simplistically, sort of to cut to the chase, I think number one, you're giving people an out-of-body experience. We're screwing with their body map. If I go through life feeling like my neck hurts and I don't want to move it, and all of a sudden I've got a headset and I'm doing this and I'm looking around, I've disrupted that sort of self-limiting feeling and self-limiting behavior using VR. So you can screw with that body map, you can change the experience, you can build interactions that are engaging. And I think the key is really engagement, and then emotion is giving people hope. Showing people that they have a range of motion, that they don't need their drugs maybe as much as they thought, giving them hope about, harnessing their own internal capacity. I think of it as, mind over molecule. We're not putting a molecule, a drug into your system, but we are tapping into your innate capacity to be healthy and to be active and engaged. And who doesn't want that?
I completely agree. And I think, again, like for me, that's like the big power of VR is, and I like that. Actually, I'm gonna have to TM that from you, is the mind over molecule, which is how do you get people to really tap into their minds to really access, these things that are there for like 24/7. I interviewed Jeffrey Moore the other day, who's the famous author of Crossing the Chasm and all those books in Silicon Valley. He wrote a new book called The Infinite Staircase about the metaphysical world, and he's been into transcendental meditation for 15 years. And he's like, there's so many things about the mind that we're not aware of, and these things are on demand 24/7. You just, whenever you want, you can access this, but most people don't know how to. And I think VR shortcuts their way to start being able to do that.
Yeah, I don't think VR does it. I think well-built VR can do that.
That's
I think that there is a tendency to overgeneralize. This is not about you, but I think that when we talk about technologies like VR, that most people by now have had at least some kind of VR experience, at least in the United States, have had something.
But not all VR is created equally.
But it's not created equal, and it's not. It's like saying I like movies, or are movies good? Some movies are good, some movies are terrible.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I, and that's not a comment on what you said, but I think it just brings up for me that it's very important to me that people.
It's like a well-made guitar, right?
Develop some media literacy, some literacy about VR, and it's complicated, but it's also can be simple. And so I'm always looking for these models that I can share with people that, oh, okay, I get it. I start to understand how to deconstruct a VR experience.
Got it. Now, just shifting a little bit, I want to kind of talk about like where you're at now, because again, you're somebody who's a pioneer in VR. You spent the last 30 years in it. So tell us about the place you're at now, because it's fascinating. I checked out the website and some of the videos that are there. A very impressive team. But tell us about the company that you're at now.
Sure. I'm excited to do that. So I am...
How excited are you to do that?
I am really excited. Actually, that's legitimate. I think that back in the day, at the HIT lab and the university, it was really exciting. It was like I spent all my time there, and it was just there was so much interesting possibility. And I joined a company called Spatial. The website is spatialinc.com. And
I'll leave that in the show notes.
I am the head of health and wellness for Spatial. Spatial is an immersive 3D audio platform for creating sound-based experiences in any kind of context. So you have a set of speakers that can be in a room, it can be in a stadium, it can be in a theme park, it can be in a hospital, it can be in a treatment room, it can be virtually any size. And it is powered by, the platform is called Spatial Studio, and it creates a virtual environment that runs, it's a VR simulation that runs the audio. So this is real-time audio, and there are objects, so we create soundscapes. So if you have one very useful thing is for naturalistic soundscapes to humanize health environments. And so you can create a scene, a forest. You have trees, they can react to physics, they can react to wind. You have bird objects that fly around, they can be on spline paths and have behaviors. So this whole simulation, you can build a little river, and you can put that river any place you want. And this environment, this real-time environment, can be played out on any kind of system. So the spatial platform, part of it is the intelligence to take immersive sound and play it in your room, and then you can take it and play it in a large space, and it will work pretty well.
That's fascinating.
The interesting.
And by the way,
thing,
I gotta give a shout out. Yeah, I gotta give a shout out because, again, I recommend people go and look at the website, especially if you're a marketer, because both on mobile and on desktop, the website is just really impressive. And I'm in marketing, so that takes a lot for me to say that. It says reinventing sound at the beginning, but just go look at the B-roll that's on the website. It's just fascinating. And then, so I had to point that out. I really want to encourage people, go check out spatialinc.com, and it is impressive. Sorry, Howard, please continue.
Thank you. No, I coming from you, that is high praise. So anyway, the technology itself is a virtual environment that can be played out on speakers. And also there's a lot of potential to do other things like AR, and there's some future things coming down the pike. But what this does in terms of, talking about therapy and talking about health applications and how it can change health, is that it makes sound very useful. And so let me put it this way, that modern medicine requires sort of three things. It needs to be precise. We're into the realm of precision medicine. And it needs to be standardized. So a doctor needs to know what they're prescribing and how it's pretty much going to work. And then the last thing is it needs to be personalized, because we're in the era of personalized medicine. And with digital health, it's even more personalizable. So when you think about music, or you think about, music therapy has been around for literally thousands of years. We all know intuitively that music is powerful. It changes our attitudes, it changes our mood, it changes our physiology. I don't think we need to even discuss that, because everybody I know listens to music. If you're sad, you listen to music. It might be sad music, it might be happy music, and yours might be different than mine. But we all know that music has a really profound effect on our mind and body. So what Spatial brings is the ability to control that in a way that has never been possible before. So because it's run by a virtual simulation, and the quality of the sound is like amazing. The quality of the sound is
how's that done, by the way? Because like that's I think like when a lot so the idea that a technology company that's just purely focused on sound, right? What makes it different than, let's say, I see, I don't even know what to compare to. This is what's fascinating to me again. I think the most impactful technologies out there are something that's so new, so different that it cannot be compared to anything. And of course that's we're getting into the realm of like creating a new category, right? Changing how people look at certain things.
Yeah, it actually, I think it is a really new area. Sound, George Lucas is famous for saying that sound is more than 50% of the movie. And it's really, we don't, it's kind of
we don't appreciate
what?
I was gonna say, we don't appreciate it's kind of like when it's bad, you'll notice it, but when it's good and amazing, like you don't appreciate how important that is. I mean, look at Alfred Hitchcock, how he used certain sounds and music to kind of like get the audience on edge for his movies. Or if you look at like what James Cameron's, some James Cameron's movies and stuff, like sound is just, it's so important, but I think we take it for granted. And I think part of it is that we've surrounded with so many like bad audio experiences that we don't know how bad it is until we're in a really good one, and we say, wow, there's like it's like night and day.
It is very much, as you say. I think movies are a great example, and that's probably the place where it's been analyzed the most. You can have a picture of a person standing in an empty field, and if the music's happy, then we get a certain mood. And if the music's kind of ominous, then you're like, wait, what's going on? So that is used very, it's highly controlled by the filmmaker.
Right.
In live sound, so say I want to do music therapy. So I create a virtual environment, a spatial soundscape. So let me give you an example. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
So we're working with Spatial is working with a hospital system in Atlanta called WellStar. And WellStar, like every other hospital, is facing a lot of strain and stress for the frontline health workers. And they're responding by creating wellness rooms that have massage chairs and places where the workers, where the nurses and the doctors can go to decompress. In these wellness rooms, there are spatial setups. So we've also created environments where they can, sound environments where they can feel like they are transported to another place. So
and they don't put headphones. They just literally walk into the place. And
right. So
got it.
Yeah. So to explain, you're not wearing anything. The speakers are in the space. A lot of times they can be hidden and completely invisible. They can be put into walls and you don't even know that they're there. Just the sound is happening. But and you can use any kind of conventional speaker.
That's what I was going to ask. So like the technology that you guys focus on, your proprietary, your IP is focused on the audio, the sound. It's not necessarily the speaker. So is there like I don't want to get ahead of myself here. Selfishly, I'm hoping, is there a world in the very near future where me as a consumer, I buy, two or three, $200, $300, $400 speakers from Best Buy or something. I set up in my office, and then as a consumer, I go and I pay a subscription or pay something to download Spatial's audio experience so I can have it for my like at-home environment. Because a lot of people are working from home, and one thing I've noticed is, I've gotten used to it. I like it, but it's still very difficult emotionally because you're not engaging with human beings and everything. So like getting out and walking around is so important. But I feel like the at-home environment can really be enhanced for especially a lot of people in technology that are now working from home.
Yeah. So,
I'm essentially trying to get you to tell me if you guys are releasing products for consumers in the very near future, and sign me up to be a beta user.
It is definitely on the roadmap, and it is coming. I think right now. So let me start from give you a sort of a clear explanation of what Spatial is and how it works, so that people can understand. And then we can talk about how it's used in therapy and how it can really, I think, transform a lot of the health spaces that we have that are not very healthy. So to run a system, you have a small computer. Everything runs on Apple computers. So like a little Mac Mini, and then you have a little amplifier, and you can have as many speakers as you want. You can have, in my office here, I have 10 and a subwoofer. You can have that, you can have less, you can have more. Installations up to 300, 400 speakers or more. And they can be over a large area. So if you have an indoor or an outdoor space, you can have spaces within the whole site. So here's an example. If you have a museum, and the lobby of the museum has one sort of set of ambient sounds, and when you walk up to an exhibit, there's a sensor that knows that you're there, or a camera, and it can respond to you in real time. So it can give you the sound for the exhibit that you're looking at, even though the rest of the room is hearing the same sort of ambient sound. So there are a site, and then you have spaces within the site, which you can determine. So in a clinical environment, that could be a lobby, a hospital lobby, and then spaces within that get different kinds of sound treatments. And there's lots more that can be done. But it can respond in real time because it's a computer, it can respond in real time to sensors, physical sensors, biosensors, camera input, input from other systems. It can be used with virtual environments. If you're doing location-based entertainment and running around in a headset doing, like The Void or something like that, you could enhance that whole thing with spatial audio. So the hardware you need to run it is a computer that can be off in a closet somewhere. It doesn't even need a monitor on it when it runs, and an amp to distribute the speakers, and then speakers that are set around the room. And then you map the space. If it's a large space, we use LiDAR to map that space. And once you map the space, then you can do a whole bunch of interesting things with it, which I can talk about later. But it's all controlled through an application on your phone. So everything is designed to be very, very controllable. You can change the soundscapes. You can make adjustments to it in certain ways. But right now, it requires an installation. The first focus is lots of the uses that I've mentioned, either in entertainment or in hospitality, or a few people are having it in their homes, but these are very high-end homes. And then my focus is bringing it to hospitals and clinics and things. So the WellStar example with the recovery rooms using it as a way for people to reduce their stress, really change their attitude, hopefully make them, reduce some of the a lot of people are leaving, a lot of people are quitting. So we want to retain staff and reduce stress for them. So that's the WellStar project, and we're also working with WellStar on a few other areas, more in the therapeutic realm, or changing, as I said, humanizing these health spaces.
Interesting. Yeah, and we had mentioned this before, but one thing that comes to mind, just because I had spent some time there during grad school, was like at places like MD Anderson, where you have people who are people who are going through chemotherapy and having to stay there for weeks and months at a time and everything. That. I always, and that was my initial interest, I guess, when you and I met, when it came to VR, now very much on the audio side as well, which is, for people who are, the people who are staying in the hospital the longest are the ones who are the most, prone to getting worse. They're the sickest. They're the most critically ill. And so optimizing that environment in the hospital so that you can, help that person use their own mind and body to put it in a better position to heal. I mean, I just feel that the outcomes could be just so much better, not just even for the patient, but even on this case that you mentioned, like if you even make a small improvement in the ability for the healthcare frontliners to manage, let's say, their stress and everything, that's going to translate into better patient care. That's going to, that'll translate into a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things that we cannot track, but you don't need a study to know that, like, if you have stressed out frontline workers, either they're going to quit, which has a string of events that happens after that affect the patient, or if they don't quit, they're stressed out, they're not going to make the best decisions, they're it's an experience, right? It's not enough just to have like treatments and procedures in the hospital. Like, there's a whole experience for the patient that has to be there. Otherwise, the act of healing is just that much more difficult.
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous amount of stress, even, pre-COVID, for frontline health workers. And the reality of the situation for patients, I had a doctor tell me that, an ICU physician who told me that, if you were a healthy person and you were put in a bed in an ICU unit and subjected to that environment and all the bongs and the noises and the alarms and the stress, by the end of the day, you would have dementia too. Or you would have,
oh, totally.
Not yet.
No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, having spent my previous device company as a Petro, like, we focused on the critical care unit, and so when we're designing our monitor, a lot of it was like, okay, we need to have alerts set up, but then it's like, well, there's like 20 different things in the ICU that go off at a variety of times. Like, if you're a patient, you're ill, like, and you're trying to rest, like, if something went off like once an hour, that would screw with my ability to just like relax. And I mean, things are going off like every 5 or 10 minutes,
Yeah. So this leads to ICU delirium, and delirium is, it's not just limited to the ICU, and it can actually have an impact statistically on 1-year mortality, especially for elderly people. So if you have delirium and it is not treated, that there's an increased risk that in a year you are going to die. So a significant increase. But I think that just typifies that's the most extreme example, but most health environments are just not very healthy. The stresses come in many forms. But I think one of the cool things about Spatial is that it can be very subtle. It's not it doesn't have to be even, you don't even have to attend to it. So the interesting thing about our hearing is that, so if you compare vision to hearing, hearing is about 4 times as fast. So when our ears, we cannot shut them off. They're on all the time. And because, and hearing, of course, it needs to be that fast because it does a lot of important things for us. It of course makes us aware of danger and all of that, but it also helps us locate sounds. So the difference between one ear and the other, the motion of our head, changes that's how we understand how far and the direction of a sound. So our ears are always attending to the world. And what that means is that they hear a lot of stuff, but they filter it out. They filter, otherwise we'd go crazy, right?
Right.
So this is the way our brains work. We have extremely sophisticated filters, but it's the cocktail party effect. So if you're in a crowded cocktail party and everybody's talking and somebody over across the room says your name, you will hear, you will attend to that. So we're attending to a lot of things that we are subconsciously attending to a lot of things in our environment that are not actually getting our full attention. So when you're in these health environments, you walk into a hospital, what do you hear? What do you feel? What's the sound of that place? Anybody who's spent a lot of time in hospitals knows that it's not a healthy environment. There's a lot going on. They're noisy, they're disruptive, they're not natural. They're not even like your home, right? Forget about being out in the woods. They're not comfortable. And so they're not comfortable for the patients, and they're not comfortable for the staff, for the health workers. So humanizing those spaces, changing the sound in very subtle ways can have a big impact. One of the fun little demos that Spatial does is, they'll have people into our conference room, and there's an environment called rainy cabin, which you feel like you're in a rainy cabin. But it's very subtle, and people come in and you have the discussion, then you turn it off. And when you turn it off, you realize how just empty that whole sound, the sound of the space is. And when you can mellow people out, when you can change the temperature in the room in that sense, you can potentially reduce aggression. You can reduce anxiety. You can reduce a lot of the kinds of behaviors that we want to try to inhibit in the workplace. So there's lots of potential for changing both wellness and health. And, I can talk to some of the therapy applications as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was going to say, I appreciate spending this time with us and everything, but yeah, let's go a little bit. I was going to say especially for the physicians listening. But first I need to do a gut check with you. How are you on time right now?
Hey, you got me. If people are listening, I am so happy to share.
Let's talk a little bit about the therapies.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were going to say the one thing?
What I was going to say was, and I would like to talk about the therapies and share some of that. But I think, this is relevant. If you're listening and you're a doctor, or you're a technology developer, or you have a kind of a for some reason, a space, you're doing palliative care, you're actually caring for people at home. Think about the sound in the space that you're in right now, and how that could be enhanced, and how it's very difficult to talk about spatial. You really need to hear it. And when you hear it, you hear the difference. So to share a personal experience, my sister, Sarah, had Hodgkin's disease, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she did a T-cell replacement bone marrow transplant many years ago. And she was in an isolation room for a month. And in that case, they basically give you 6 months of chemotherapy in a couple of days, and it destroys your immune system. And then you wait and hope your immune system recovers before something comes in and kills you. So she was in this room, and 24/7, she was listening to chanting. And just how uplifting that was for her. And I spent some time in that hospital with her, and she had that running 24/7. And I think that's a great example of, it didn't sound wonderful. It was on a cheap little speaker, but it talks to the power of the potential. What VR and spatial bring is that feeling of being transported out of your physical space. So it's getting back to that definition. It's virtual reality is a computer generated experience that evokes the sensation the experience is real. So when the sound is realistic and it's all around you and it is spatial, it's spatialized, you're not just listening to a thing, you feel like you are there. And when you close your eyes, you feel like you're transported into that space. And that transportive element can be used in a lot of therapeutic environments. The controllability of the virtual environment and the response to biosensors, so I can create a closed loop biofeedback system, that responsiveness can also be used for therapy. And we can gather data, we can track you, we can use those biosensors to try to hone and personalize the therapy so that you can what you were doing yesterday is not a limit. Now we can try new things for you today based on what you've achieved. So these capabilities, again, we need precision, we need standardization, and we need personalization. And that has never been possible with sound before.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think what's really exciting, again, this is a little bit of a departure from sort of a scientific and medical discussion, but these are the kind of things that you can't exactly run a study on this. But one thing that I've just realized is, and it's made me have more an appreciation for the First Amendment in this country, which is the freedom of speech, is that in order to really think, you have to speak. And so a lot of times, we don't watch the words that we're using. And I became more hyper aware of this over the years. And so when I look back in my past, the times that I, let's say, struggled with something, I failed, bad things happened, I was speaking and using the wrong words. And those are the things that I was hearing. And of course, because I'm, whoever I'm engaging with, they're saying those things back. And, the dumbest thing I think people can do these days is get in the car and turn on the radio to something random and just sort of let whatever random song comes on, because that has such a strong effect on you, because it's going to generate images in your mind. And those images that you have in your mind, you're going to put energy and focus on them. You're going to take action in some way, And so I think this concept of when you walk into a room, just we would never think of having a, let's say a baby's room or our home living room or something where the walls are empty. We would feel we're what the hell is this? There's no life in this room. But I think because we've never thought about sound in that aspect, once, and this is what's exciting about Spatial, is that once they get, I was going to say fit on with a new pair of glasses, they'll never see the world again. I guess when they're actually fit with a new set of ears, you'll think about that everywhere you go, and I think that's what's really exciting is that, again, this has never been possible before. And now that it is, what's exciting is to see like what kind of outcomes are we going to see, even if it's something as simple as like uplifting somebody's mood, right? Which I think people take for granted. I mean, there's that old saying, not an old saying, but like, I don't know, some video clip, it shows like some kid at school being bullied, and then like one of the kids across the locker, like, like smiles at the kid, and that like changes that person's day and kind of like uplifts them. And I feel like sound is definitely got to have that much more impact, because it's as you said, it's like 4 times faster for us. It's a lot more primitive. It's a lot more primal,
Yeah, the emotional lift is really important. I think when people think of music, that's kind of probably the first thing that they think of. They think of emotional lift. There are other things we can do that are related to an emotional lift, like stress reduction, like these wellness rooms at Wellstar, really targeted things for anxiety, depression, social. But
that's
isolation.
Different, though, right?
What?
I don't mean interrupt. This is different. That's why I'm really interested in that. If you think of a movie or a song, the emotional inflections are intentionally there, versus if you walk into a room and it's a rainy cabin, it's kind of like the ultimate experience when it comes to mindfulness, which is, I know what I'm supposed to feel, but it's not giving me like a very a specific direction. It's almost like it kind of unfolds on its own.
Right.
Like if you're listening to like Seascape, like the sounds of the ocean, like I don't think like, oh, I'm going to start relaxing, but put me in an environment like that for 5 or 10, 15 minutes, I feel differently. I think this is the reason why, like, why do people like to go and have dinner close to the ocean, even when they can't sometimes see, they don't have a perfect view of the ocean? It's the sound of it, right?
Right. We started talking about virtual environments, and I think, a headset experience, VR works because it works at a pre-conscious level. So that sense of immersion, that sense that you are in that place, it just happens. It doesn't require any thinking. It doesn't require any cognition. We just get that sense because it's so matched to our senses, right? If VR required, if a headset required actual cognitive effort, it wouldn't work. VR just wouldn't work. Spatial is kind of the same. And what's cool about it is that it's just there. You don't, these things, I mean, you kind of have to experience it in order to really understand it. But when you go into a room that is where the sound is transformed, it's like the water the fish swims in. You just go there. And it does some of the heavy lifting for us. And then once so there's a kind of a base of what you can do where we're changing the environment. We're taking away, we can do some masking. We can use sound. So if in an ICU, we can use sound that responds to, take a waterfall. A waterfall is good at masking certain sounds. But you wouldn't want to be sitting under a cascade 24/7, right? That's
definitely not. Yeah.
But so the dynamic nature of spatial means that it can listen and respond, for example. So sound masking is another whole area that is really important. A lot of people suffer from trigger sounds that will cause them to be angry, that will cause them, emotional distress. So there's a whole bunch of ways that emotion can be therapeutic.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, now that you mention it, I mean, this is something that I've dealt with all my life, but like, I don't have any ticking clocks in my house. Can't have it. Yeah. It's very aggravating for me. Like for most other people, it's fine, but like, It literally is like water. When I go to a hotel room, they have that on. Like I'll rip the clock off the wall and take out the batteries because I'm just, like I can't, I can't deal with it.
Yeah, I know. It's a great example of how we even small things can have a big effect. Tick, tick, tick. I mean, some people can just block it out, but it also drives me nuts.
I can block out a lot of things. My all the years of meditation I've done, I cannot. I don't have the mindfulness to block that out. Other thing is like I cannot sit at a table while other people are eating and I'm not eating because hearing other people eat, like I just can't do it. I've never said that publicly.
This is I'll offer you a sandwich first.
Oh man, yeah.
So that first set of things that we've talked about is these emotional. I kind of group them under an emotional lift. That's depression, anxiety, dealing with fear. A lot of people have fear when they come into a hospital system. Social isolation. In those clean rooms, it's extremely isolating for cancer patients. Infusion, dialysis, a lot of places where we are just kind of helpless and stuck. Another area, which is kind of a little more more towards the therapy side. So for sensory and cognitive processing disorders, so we're talking about people, a lot of kids, ADD, ADHD, autism spectrum, other kinds of cognitive and sensory processing disorders that where people get overwhelmed. People have a hard time filtering out. They get the multisensory experiences become overwhelming. They'll either retreat or get angry. There's a lot of issues there. And these are pretty prevalent especially for kids, but adults have these issues too. So occupational therapists, for example, use different kinds of multisensory gyms or different kinds of therapeutic environments that use sound and physical motion or get people engaged, get them climbing and actually kind of physically active and exercising. And doing that as a way to control and to learn the skills of how to do, how to filter and also how to gain some inhibition control and different kinds of things. So imagine applying that in a digital sense where we can have a space that the speakers are, or the space is mapped, and we can use camera systems and physical tracking systems to move sounds around, to basically create a sound gym where sound and physical motion and coaching and cognitive behavioral therapy and other kinds of interventions combine and can be used and be very versatile and replicable and have all the advantages of VR that we were talking about. So dealing with phobias, dealing with, interventions, triggers, that kind of thing. Delirium, dementia, those sorts of therapies.
Interesting. Just out of curiosity, your work with Wellstar, will you be able to, will you be like publishing a case study or a video or anything in the near future, kind of showing what that experience is like? So I'm sure a lot of, we do have hospital administrators and execs who follow this show, and I'm wondering,
Yeah, so I guess my message to hospital administrators and people who are in the healthcare world, I've seen that most hospital systems have some sort of digital innovation or innovation arm. A lot of times they are really forward thinking and amazing. The medical simulation people, that's an area that I've worked in too, and talked to people in that, in medical schools and teaching hospitals and things like that. They really have their finger on the pulse of technology and the problems. Innovation labs, sim labs, but there's a huge gap. There's typically a giant gap between what is happening there, the innovation in these kind of incubators, if you want to call them that, and getting it into practice. And and I think that, so what is really exciting about Wellstar, and I've come to learn this by working with them, is that so Wellstar is a hospital system of, they have, I believe, 17 hospitals, and they have 300 clinics. They're based in Atlanta. They're geographically all around the Atlanta area. So it's a good sized system that has a lot of complexity and a broad, diverse patient population. And it's big enough, but it's small enough to be responsive and really to make change. The bigger the system gets, the harder, the more the inertia, right? And the VA sort of typifies that, right? It's the most extreme example, the largest health system in the world. So, but Wellstar is really interested in how, I think every health system shares the desire to change and transform and innovate, because they see, number one, we can't, we can't just keep doing what we've been doing. When you look at the health economics of the baby boomers, the large population that is aging and is going to very soon be needing lots of services. And today, hospitals are down. A quarter of the hospitals are massively short-staffed due to COVID. So, but leave that aside. Even before COVID, this was a looming problem.
Yeah, it was still a problem.
Yeah, so we need to do something different. And I think everybody looks at digital like it's the panacea. But I think what is really we're moving towards is moving towards trying to change these spaces, maybe make them smaller. The large hospital model is transforming into smaller regional neighborhood hospitals or clinics. So moving people out, the hospital, that industrial hospital, is really the most expensive environment to run. And not a really good one either. Right. And Wellstar is actually, they're I think, very much ahead of the game in this. They're trying to they have created what are called health parks that are inside of sort of retail-ish spaces, hotels and all kinds of, malls and things like that, that are very accessible, that don't feel like you're walking into a hospital, but you can go and get all of the basic services and some, even outpatient surgeries and things like that. So I think the model is changing. It's moving to a much more human scaled kind of environment. And in that environment, what is going to excel? The places that are appealing, that make us feel comfortable, that reduce stress, that reduce stress for the workers. Those are all going to be really successful. And if we can deliver new kinds of therapy that maybe people can take home, and to answer your question that you asked before, but I think I answered it. But yes, right now we're focused on the clinical environment. Very much that transition in healthcare is moving from, get them out of the ER, get them into the office, get them out of the office, help treat them in a small clinic or at home, ultimately. So we want to push care down to the lowest cost kind of environment. And digital and VR are really, sound, visuals, headsets, digital, smart kinds of devices in your home can really go a long way to help that transition and make it meaningful and effective and measurable.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. One mainly because of the pandemic. I mean, we saw the like boom in like digital mental health. So like, with me and friends and family, like whether we need to see a therapist or psychiatrist, like it's so much better just to do it digitally. But then also, I mean, end of the year, we were all surprised by the fact that Oracle and Larry Ellison made the biggest acquisition in their history, which was in healthcare and acquiring Cerner. And so seeing that there's going to be this opportunity to do more things at smaller, more localized venues, from like big hospital to an ASC to a small, small outpatient clinic to a office to home. I think these options are going to be better because, aside from the fact that it's a lot cheaper, but I think quality is just so much better. Howard, I want to keep rolling, but I know that we have to be mindful of your time. This last segment, we just do these quick rapid fire questions.
Go.
You can take as long as you want to answer them or as short as you want, and we'll move to the next one. There's like 3 or 4 of them. Okay.
Go.
Perfect. All right. So during the pandemic and, 2020 to 2021, we've all Amazon primed a lot of things. We bought a lot of like stuff. I built like a garage gym and ordered a bunch of books. What's the coolest thing that you bought for under $200?
The coolest thing that I bought for under $200.
It could be a gadget. It could be a book. It could be anything.
Wow. During the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
What about last year?
Last year, under $200.
I'm glad of all the questions I've asked you, this is the one that stumped you.
This stumps me. It's funny because I've got so much technology around here, but I don't know what that is. It'd probably be something musical. Okay. If you're under $200, it might be a tuner. Like there's some amazing music. I'm really into recording right now, and probably, I mean, it might be in the area of some of these plugins for using audio, which are, it's just an incredible world of where sound has gone and where home recording has gone. And that's actually helped me survive. Yeah. That has actually helped me survive COVID. It's playing music and just maintaining that as a part of my life and my health. But probably the coolest things that I've seen are that I've acquired are in the software realm, plugins that do these amazing musical things that are a little esoteric, but that's probably it.
Got it. Very cool. Okay. So next question to you is that like in healthcare, in a lot of industries, but especially I think this is something that's very specific to medicine, continuing education is a big thing. And so most physicians, if not all of them, they're all very well read outside of their specialty and, different things, hobbies, etc. You can pick one or the other. You can pick like in your career and life or just in the last few months, but is there a book that you feel that you've gifted and recommended most often? And if so, what is that book and
why? I'm into this book, Deep Survival, which had kind of an impact on me. So Deep Survival grapples with the question, why do some people who are lost in the wilderness survive and other people die? And it looks at a whole bunch of different...
now.
What?
I'm buying that right now.
It looks at a whole bunch of different examples of, it's not always the people that you would expect to survive. Like somebody who is very fit and, athletic, and they get lost and they die. And then some young teenager who crashes in a plane and walks out, an insane distance without shoes and, with no food and survives. So what is it about people, both sort of internally, spiritually, that helps them, that serves them well? What mistakes do we make when we're out in the wilderness? And the first thing is, panic. But there's a lot more to it. And then, what do you do? What do you do if you're in that situation? So Deep Survival, it's a really cool book. And it really goes into that and gives a lot of examples about people who have done some people do some really dumb stuff and end up dying from it.
Interesting.
Some people die not any of their own fault, but some people, hubris plays a big role. So anyway, that's one I would recommend.
I'm putting these in the show notes. I was gonna say I feel like a good companion to that because it's similar, more on the psychological side, is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was Holocaust survivor, was in Auschwitz, and he wrote about like why is it that like people who are like big and strong and fit they never survive, but the people who you don't think would survive they would. And all again, kind of the theme of our conversation here is like, how do you prime and guide what you have within your own body and your mind to, better outcomes. All right. Last question for you. So I want you to pretend that for the next year, because again, part of this is a medical show. The other side of it is a tech innovator show. Let's just say, entrepreneurs in the healthcare space, they, on the way to work, let's say I take out a billboard across all the U.S. This is a billboard that every entrepreneur sees going into work. And then for those who are at home, there's a notification that comes up on the phone that they're going to see this message every day for a whole year. What message do you put on that billboard and notification?
That is an interesting question. If I could send a message to everybody in the United States, maybe it's gonna be okay. I think. I mean, you've putting self-interest aside. Advertising my product, because I think what really we're suffering from, obviously, is this lack of a shared sense of society, and that we can't even agree on facts. We can't agree on whether a vaccine is good for you or not. And I don't know what the magic bullet is. I really don't. I think that I would try to figure out something that really addresses that. But I
think it's going to be okay too.
If it was about VR and that kind of thing, I think, I would want people to understand and give them links to something that will help them to make sense of the digital future. Because I think that most people, there's a lot of people who are engaged with it. There's a lot of people who just hope it never comes. And there's a whole bunch of people who are just too busy to even pay attention. And I wouldn't make this the message, it is coming. But that's not gonna be a winner. But I think something that encourages people and gives them some sense that, people look at AI and VR, and I think there's a real dystopian kind of ring to a lot of it. So don't panic is probably part of the message, but I think the key to not panicking is to really build your literacy about, let's learn about how these digital things are going to change society and ourselves. And it would be something along those lines. And I don't have the great slogan, No,
that's what.
off the top of my tongue.
No, and that's not why
I would go.
Got it. But no, that's not what it's about. And I think that's a fair message and a good one, which is it's going to be okay. And I think a lot of times we get kind of sucked into what's going on social media and the news and everything, and realizing that like things sometimes they're not as bad as they seem, and that I'm on team human. And I think that everything is going to be okay. And I think in many ways we haven't realized it yet, but what we've went through in the pandemic is really ushering in a golden age in history in terms of what we're going to be capable of doing in technology and healthcare, the way we look at our lives. I think it was a big wake up call for how we look at our health. So I think it's going to be more. Yeah, I think it's going to be okay. I think it'll be more than okay. But I like that message. Howard Rose. Where can people find you online?
Well, as I said, spatialinc.com is where you can find more about the company. And just to put a plug in, there is an early access program. So if people want to try Spatial, they can try it for free. There's a form there on the website where you can, if you're a creator, you can download it. It's free to use. In a non-commercial setting, nice. So you can learn and get a chance to do that. I am on LinkedIn, and will include I also tweet. I'm HR for VR at Twitter and at Instagram. So we'll include the links, and thank you, Omar. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And I'm looking forward to that glass of wine.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait, man. It's been way too long.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Howard Rose, everybody. If you're a physician or healthcare provider listening to us, again, check the links below. With your reflection through CMFI, you will get an AMA PRA credit one. It's one of those things. But essentially, you will get a CME credit for your reflection through CMFI. So check the links below. I'm your host, Omar M. Khateeb. This is another episode of The State of MedTech. We will see you all next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.